Hello, going to talk a little bit just about Wraith the Oblivion, in particular the 20th anniversary edition, just a little bit, and a book that they put out to help you kind of get started. So I'll be talking about that in just a little bit. So they finally put out the 20th anniversary after a long delayed Kickstarter. This is the print-on-demand copy, and you can see it's quite large. It's about 503 pages. And I was also lucky enough to get the fancy deluxe ones, that White Wolf does. You can kind of see the chains that are kind of embossed into it, and it's hard to see, but you can see the name on the spine there. And there's other videos that people have done of unboxing, but incredible looking book, silver on the end, just beautiful. But along with those two books that I have, I've got this that they put out, the Handbook for the Recently Deceased. It was also part of the Kickstarter, and it's only about 43 pages. And what it says that it's supposed to be is, it says Handbook for the Recently Deceased. Obviously, that's from Beetlejuice, but is a guide for those who are new to the underworld, players, shadow guides, and storytellers alike. This is, in my opinion, a little bit of a mixed bag. Overall, it's good, but it could have been better, I think. But it's not extremely expensive, and I'm happy that I got it because it looks cool, and it's got some art in it and stuff. It looks like the main big book. So yeah, it's not bad. I think picking it up as a PDF would probably be a little bit better for some people. But just really quick about Wraith, because I know there's tons of videos out there explaining all about Wraith. Wraith is a strange game where you, in essence, are playing someone who has died. So right there, that's already getting out of a lot of people's safe spots that they're used to being in. And they have, in essence, been reborn as part of the underworld, the Shadowlands, Stygia, and just a whole bunch of new places to try to explain to your players. It's a very odd game. It's definitely the kind of the black sheep of White Wolf's original World of Darkness lines, and it's weird because you say, okay, I've died. You're one of the restless dead. You've left something behind, or something you've got business still to do once you've died, and you're trying to figure out exactly how to do that. So it's one of those things where you're like, well, what do I do? It's kind of funny because in most other games, you know how to be kind of maybe a vampire or a werewolf or a warrior or something like that. But with Wraith, with being a ghost, it's like, well, what exactly am I supposed to do now? Am I trying to fix some great, problem that's going to make me go to wherever I need to go, in the afterlife? Or do I just kind of haunt people? So a lot of people have some notions about it like that. And there's a lot more to it, obviously, that you can do, and it is very unique, and it's probably why it's a little bit hard to grasp exactly how Wraith works. But this Handbook for the Recently Deceased, when I read that, I say Handbook for the Recently Deceased, so I'm thinking it's going to be everything for someone who's just died. Well, it does have that. The first section is all about playing the recently deceased. That's the part one. There's in 3 parts. So it does give you some examples and of what you're going to be doing and what's happened to you now and what you can do. You can tend to your fetters, which are pretty much things that hold you back from your living life. That hold you to it pretty much. Is there a person, place, or thing? Maybe it's family, maybe it's a building, your house, whatever it may be. That's your fetters. And then it tells you what you can do, like you can become locally involved in Stygia, which is a big city in the underworld. You can try to fight the politicians and stuff of Stygia. You can join the welcoming committee where you welcome new wraiths into the world by reaping them, is what it's called, and removing them from their call, which is pretty much almost like a cocoon or something that keeps them in. And so that's helpful in explaining a little bit what you can do. And it's only about 10 pages. It explains a little about your fetters, about your passions. Your passions are, what, not just something physical, but what emotionally do hold you to your existence in a good light, like protecting your family, maybe righting a wrong, making sure that somebody is safe. The list goes on and on. It's very personal, and that's one of the things that the game excels at. It's a very personal game with you and your choices that you make for your character. It tells you a little bit about the different lands, the skin lands, which are our world, the Shroud, which separates the Skinlands from the Shadowlands, which is like a mirrored dark version of our world. And then it goes on to the Tempest, which is a huge storm. Stygia, again, the capital city of the Dark Kingdom of Iron. The Dark Kingdoms, the Far Shores, and the Labyrinth, where the Void and ultimately Oblivion awaits for you at the end. So it tells you a little about the guilds, because you can join some outlawed guilds that help you with your kind of powers that you have as a Wraith. And it tells you about the different factions. And then it goes into a section called The New Shadow. One part about, here's the cover of the book. There you go. Looks pretty good. I like the cover. I love the art. Looks nice. And it's a little book. So that's cool. The cool thing about this Shadow is that it's new, it's different, it may be completely just out there for a lot of players, and pretty much it's a dark aspect of yourself that's trying to, in essence, kind of win a little bit over you, take control of you and muck stuff up. And it's much more complicated than that. I don't want to sit here, I could do a whole video on what your shadow is, but in essence it's another character that you have that is kind of a dark side of you. And as you have your passions, it has its dark passions. And it has some powers and abilities, and it's very mysterious about how it's going to manifest with your character. But that being said, it goes on to some more stuff about the Shadow, and it does a good bit about the Shadows. Like, there's multiple pages on it, a lot more than I thought would be. And then there's a section at the end, it's about storytelling for the recently deceased. It's a great thing for storytellers. It explains a lot about how you can run like their first shadow guiding, passions and fetters, the introducing Oblivion or not, Transcendence, where maybe you go on to a higher existence as a Wraith. And it's very good. I mean, I really like that section a lot. It's great for me to run Wraith. But ultimately, and it gives you, one thing that's cool, it gives you some storytelling, like if you want to be in the Skinland, some ideas, kind of like some adventure hook type things, or some ideas about how you want to run your game. Storytelling, the hierarchy, which of course is those are the kind of the politicians in charge, the renegades and the heretics, and that's very useful. Building supporting characters, building antagonists, the supporting cast, it's all very good. But ultimately, with this book, I think it could have been better. Handbook of the Recently Deceased tells me it's for someone new, and I like the section for storytelling, and it's going to be in the main book as well, and it's laid out a little bit more simply or plainly in this book. But I would have taken out that section and expanded more on the new Restless Dead, the new Wraith chapter, and just had 2 chapters. Because I believe that as you start to understand a little bit about you being a Wraith, all of a sudden it goes into your shadow and shadow guiding, and it's kind of complex, not in mechanics, but just in try to wrap your head around it. So I would have wished there was a little bit more explaining about maybe the day-to-day, maybe some examples of day-to-day life of a Wraith, maybe in Stygia or in the Skinlands. Examples maybe of the guilds, of the legions, because there's different legions that you may join based on how you've died, the manner in which you've died. And it would have been nice to have just a little bit more information about that for new players. The section on Shadow Guiding, of course, is good, but it was a moment where I was like, I would have liked to have had more of the original stuff, the normal stuff on how to start off with a Wraith character. Not how to build a character, but just what is going to be involved, because that's a little bit hard to get your head around. You can be reaped, and you can be, in essence, your soul can be melted down. Your essence can be melted down into an item or a coin. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, and a lot of people, a lot of souls, I guess, Wraiths that are out to get you. Specters, those are kind of the evil Wraiths. That Oblivion, that are trying to pretty much suck you down into Oblivion. They're monsters, if you wish, of Wraith. But Wraith is a very cerebral game. It's very, you have to really get your head around it in a sense that's not fantasy. It's not Western fantasy like, Western Europe or something with like, Europe or something like that. And it's not vampire and werewolf, which we've seen tons of times in, all sorts of entertainment. So this is where you have to really say, it's almost like playing Planescape for D&D or playing the Dreamlands for Call of Cthulhu. So it would have been nice to have just a little bit more for the player. So when you give your players this, if you want to say, hey, Handbook recently done, if you don't want to introduce shadow guiding right off the bat, then they only have 1 chapter to really mess with. The rest 2 chapters they're not going to really deal with. So that's kind of unfortunate. And so I would have liked that chapter to have been more fleshed out. But And that's my, that's a negative to the book, I think. But the thing is, all 3 chapters are great, so it's kind of weird. It's like, well, if you want to get the PDF and just print out the first pages that have the information for a new Wraith, I think that would be very helpful. Get both of them, and it's cool to have on your, just to have. And I think once you become well versed with Wraith, you won't be needing this book at all. So it's not extremely expensive, but it still is a good pickup. But yeah, I can see some areas where I'd like for there to be some improvement. Maybe explain more about what type of things you might be facing enemies wise. And I guess maybe they didn't want to put that in because they didn't want the storyteller to. Maybe they're not using that, so they don't want to divulge information that they're not going to be using. But I think the guilds and the legions, a little bit more of the history, and just exactly, one of my things about Wraith is getting around what it looks like. And of course, with any role-playing game, if you don't know what it looks like, you're going to create it in your mind. But it would be helpful just because it's a little bit more abstract. But still, it's a good pickup, and it's got stuff to get out of it. I just wish that it lived up more to its title. That's all. So there it is. Handbook for the Recently Deceased. Here's the picture again. Yeah, it's not bad. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.